Hello and welcome to the Post Daily News Show for Wednesday, February the 23rd. I am John Pollock alongside Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John. Happy to be here. And
Oh,
happy
okay.
to hear as well.
I'm happy
Glad
that
I
you're
have
happy
that
to hear me, to see me, and to be here. That's great news.
Always a good day when you can hear, when you can see, when you can smell. So I'm certainly happy to hear.
Yes. Usually, your welcome greeting when I join you is "you again."
I should try that out. Yeah.
Well, it's a little harsh at times, but nonetheless, I have thick skin. We have lots to talk about today. We will be going through some of the news items that have occurred over the past 24 hours. And we're going to be spending a lot of today's show discussing what today signifies the 20th anniversary of Ring of Honor, holding their first event on this date 20 years ago at the Murphy Rec Center. No better person than ROH Authority himself. You know him from the GRAPPL Spotlight podcast and the British Wrestling Experience, returning to the Post Daily News Show. It's Benno. Hello, Benno.
Hey guys, happy to be here. I've got the real ROH World title behind me on display on this happiest days, the ROH anniversary celebrations. I've got myself a cup of Tim Hortons going right now.
Ooh.
I'm feeling good, ready to
Look
go
at that. We're all in tandem here, Benno.
On brand.
I got the McDonald's. I'm sorry.
Oh, you cheapskate. Well, we will be talking a bit more about Ring of Honor because it's a very interesting show to look back on, and the fact that here they are 20 years later. They have gone through so many permutations over those 20 years, but here they are on the brink of whatever the next phase of Ring of Honor is going to be. I think that's still a very relevant question, but we're going to go through some of the news items, and starting things off is the report that had come out recently, first from The Observer, that AJ Styles had signed a new deal with WWE, and getting further details from Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful Select that it appears to be a multi-year deal worth in excess of $3 million per year when all is said and done. So an extraordinary deal for one AJ Styles. And we don't know the exact length of the term other than it is multi-year. But when you look at the age of AJ Styles, you're certainly looking at kind of the tail end of his in-ring career that this deal may in fact take him to. But first of all, Benno, just in terms of if you are AJ Styles right now, assessing like the position that he is in, he is not one of your top guys, but certainly a protected middle of the pack guy that you can always, heat up for a program. Did you view this as the best option available for AJ, especially taking into account the financials that are attached to this?
Yeah, I think so. I think with AJ, he's done his time. He was in TNA for God knows how long, too long. He had his New Japan run. I don't think any of us who were fans of him in the mid-2000s ever expected him to be somebody that Vince McMahon liked enough to push at the level he gets pushed in WWE. He's got a good life, and he is one person who, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, people like that, you hear rumblings about AEW being a possibility. I don't think AEW is ever really a serious possibility for AJ Styles. To me, at this point, he seems like a WWE lifer, and he's someone who, you can't begrudge him, really, can you? Like I say, he's done his time.
Wait, when you couple this with the recent re-signings of Kevin Owens, of Sami Zayn, this is once again you're looking at multi-year deals and a lot of money that this company is putting into its talent, and certainly can afford to do so. At the same time, we would be remiss not to look at other significant deals that were signed over the last couple of years, and some of those performers not seeing the end of those contracts as well. And it's just that's always going to be, I think, a factor in play if you do not have one of those elusive no-cut deals, which it sounds like few, if any, do.
Yeah. I mean, I think where AJ really certainly stands out amongst the rest is the potential value he holds if the competition were to get a hold of him. AJ Styles in the WWE, I think we see his utility as really, a tag team partner for your big projects like an Omos, somebody to maybe occasionally throw into an elimination chamber to get beaten up by Brock Lesnar or something. But in the hands of an AEW, in the mix of the style of wrestling promotion that at AEW or New Japan or any other promotion than the WWE, he is a major player. And I mean, hard to say at this moment whether or not he'd be somebody who would make a difference in the overall outcome of a ratings war, for instance. But nonetheless, he would be very valuable to the competition, and I can certainly understand why WWE would want to retain him for that reason.
On that front, Benno, when you're assessing like those of a certain star power in WWE and not wanting to let them go to AEW or elsewhere, how would you, if you're WWE, look at like a Bill Goldberg whose deal is up, and like what is that valuable enough of someone that we can use a couple times a year, and more importantly, we don't hand him off to our competitor?
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of that because obviously things seem to go back and forth. And, one moment they're cutting Braun Strowman, the next moment they're cutting 3 million deals. That's just kind of, a company under Vince McMahon. But yeah, I think that seems to be the way the wind is blowing right now. That maybe, they are a little bit not worried, but more conscious, of the competition, more conscious of how it looks, for everybody to be going in one direction from, WWE to AEW. They want to, bring over a guy like Cody, or they want to retain their own guys. So I do see that happening. I think Goldberg has I think he's mentioned before in interviews, has a good personal relationship with Tony Khan, but I don't see him fitting on that side either. But I think WWE will make sure, like with AJ, to keep him as, as a valuable player at the top of the card.
Would you venture to guess, Way, that this could be the last contract for AJ in terms of a regular week-to-week performer? Like, we don't know the exact number of years, but multi-years, and we're talking about a guy in his mid-40s.
I think an interesting question would be would this be the last contract he would sign that would garner him the reported amount of money that they are paying him right now? When he is 47, is he going to be again a reported $3 million player? That is I think an interesting question, because I mean I feel like they reserve that sort of money for, I don't know, maybe somebody like on the level of a Bill Goldberg, and I don't necessarily see AJ being the level of draw. Like he's never been positioned up to that standard. So I don't think it's his last contract, but unless AEW becomes that much bigger of a thing, and or the competition becomes that much bigger of a thing, and the money for these performers somehow in the next 3 years increases to that level, I don't know if if the leverage would be there for them to justify paying AJ Styles that much. But again, who knows what the industry is going to look like in 3 years' time.
And the headline here is that maybe this officially closes the door on any independent nostalgia run for Air Styles and Air Paris. I think that ship has left the port, and I don't think we'll ever get the reunion outside of WWE.
Maybe in WWE.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. No, depending on the schedule, if Air Paris would be willing to come on board.
How do you guys see AJ being used in the next 3 years? I mean, do you see him getting a championship run, or is he going to find himself in more positions like this Omos tag team?
I see kind of just in between that. I don't see him being trivial, but I think his days of kind of having some kind of extended championship run, I really don't see him at that level. Even with this, I just think like his placement in the chamber match this Saturday is kind of indicative of that. Like a Sami Zayn, he'll always be in a good role. I don't think he's ever going to be your top end level guy. Do you see the same, Benno, or are you more optimistic?
Yeah, I think with AJ, it's kind of like he's not a reliable hand. I think that does him down a little bit, but he's someone you can always go back to. If you need a short-term title run or somebody to be at the top of a SmackDown for a few weeks, I think they will continue to go back to AJ. I think his days of being, literally at one point one of the best wrestlers in the world, we're getting to that point in his career where, he isn't pushing himself to have absolute match of the year candidate matches. He's still wrestling at a very high level, and he can still contribute when need be. But I think we're moving into that stage of AJ's career where he'll be a good tag team partner for someone. He's a good utility player to put into the main events, but that's kind of where he is at this stage of his career and his age, I think.
Yeah, and it'll be a good sign of like where he ends up on the WrestleMania card of kind of that importance on top of it. We had the numbers, the ratings were delayed this week due to President's Day in the U.S., but we did get the Friday numbers. So starting off with SmackDown, this was the taped show. So they taped it the week prior in New Orleans, doing 2,173,000 viewers and a 0.54 in the 18 to 49 demo. So they were down 3% in viewers, 3.5% in the demo. So to me, being a taped show that was running against All-Star Weekend for the NBA, the Winter Olympics as well was closing down. I can't say like the taped aspect made all that meaningful difference for SmackDown, and did actually very well in Canada, going against all of those sports competitions, as well as a pair of NHL games. They were number 2 in viewers among sports broadcasts and number 1 in the 25 to 54 demo, which is the main one in Canada. They were ahead of all of that sports competition. So I have to say, Wai, that I don't think taping an episode a week out, it's as problematic for their audience that tuned in for this, at least in a respectful level.
It wasn't a problem, I suppose, for the people that typically make an effort to watch on Fridays. I thought it was a dreadful episode, in particular the last hour, where it was just like they dragged that thing out. Like they clearly shot only like an hour's worth of content, if that, and decided to drag this thing out to 2 hours of video packages and just mind-numbing slow walkouts and all that stuff. So I mean, I suppose if you're watching this stuff anyway without much other options on a Friday night, then you'd be okay. But God, I don't think I'd be returning the next week if I wasn't covering it.
Oh, it's that big face-to-face, Benno, that everyone just was clamoring for. That and the handling of the Charlotte Ronda interaction with the table smash, of how that would be cleaned up. I think those were your big draws on Friday night. Rampage, on the other hand, was outside of their time slot. They were airing at 7 p.m. Eastern time, so 4 Pacific, and they did 471,000 viewers, which would be their lowest overall viewership of the year. Their demo was actually up 5% this week, which I don't have any understanding of how that demo grew at 7 Eastern, where you're West Coast. I cannot imagine too many people were just hightailing it from work to get home for 4 o'clock to watch Rampage on top of it. I don't think there's any value in going too deep into any of these Rampage numbers when it's a one-off outside of the time slot. And if anything, I'm stunned that the demo actually had like a 5% increase this week.
Yeah, I don't know how you read into that. Is there like a pre-Big Bang effect for or I don't know, like I don't know what people are watching on that particular network at 6 o'clock, for instance, that might somehow contribute to it. But I suppose, like, I mean, is this good enough data for them to potentially consider a move to a 7 o'clock?
I don't think so. I just think over time, like that West Coast effect would be just, I think, very difficult to move it that much earlier. It's like, this is not a great number by Rampage standards. And I think that Friday, just in general, I think is a really bad time for them, whether it's late or early. But if I'm picking the two, it's 10 o'clock over 7 o'clock. But maybe if they have to move it for other stuff, maybe this will be the slot they find. Keep people on that night, and that demo, they will find Rampage. They will seek out Jay White and Trent Beretta.
I think that's it. I mean, I'll say on behalf of people on this side of the world, we're all quite happy.
Oh yeah, for you guys, this must have been great. You know? Yeah.
Midnight is basically the middle of the day compared to the normal 3 a.m. time slot. So we'll take it. If it became a regular thing, I think my sleep pattern would be a lot better. But yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it, where it's, you know, when you're talking such small numbers, comparatively, you are going to get these little fluctuations. It is hard to kind of explain sometimes, but yeah, Dynamite Rampage has kind of just settled into its little slot, hasn't it, really? And it's a bit chicken in the egg, you know. It doesn't feel like the most important show in the world, and neither should it be, really, with the comparative people watching it compared to Dynamite.
And earlier today, All Japan and Noah both had big cards, and I would say the most noteworthy result came out of the Noah card in Nagoya, where Kazuyuki Fujita, at the age of 51, became the GHC heavyweight champion for the first time, pinning Katsuhiko Nakajima. I watched the ending of this. The idea of Fujita giving anything to this guy in defeat would be laughable. He hits him with the Beast Bomb, soccer kicks his face off, and then goes for the cover. And at 2, he lifts up the shoulders of the champion to give him another beast bomb and then pin him. Could not make Nakajima look like more of a putz here, losing this title. This has been a result that I think you could severely question. When Noah, I think one of their biggest strengths has been their main events and having these state-of-the-art title matches with Nakajima and Kano, and I do not think Fujita is going to be carrying that reputation into these upcoming title matches. He's going to defend against Masato Tanaka on March the 21st, which is interesting because Tanaka will turn 49 years old at the end of February, meaning that when they meet on March 21st, they will have a combined age of 100. For this GHC heavyweight title. I doubt either of you have had a chance to see this match yet, but just watching the closing sequence, I mean, it was the kind of title win you would expect for Fujita here, and yes, Nakajima is done as champion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is Fujita honestly a big enough name that that warrants perhaps a move like this? Like what
No.
what is the So what's the thinking behind it?
I defer to you two. I don't know. Like this is I was one that when they put the title on Muto, I was at least open to. I understand what they're trying to do here with Muto, but we saw that experiment. It did not have legs, and it was, I don't think a strength by the end of it. You never got the Kaito Kiyomiya victory over Muto, and I think like that is the danger of using a Muto. And Fujita, to me, does not come with any of the arguments that a Muto at least does of even short-term gain. So this was a puzzling outcome for me, and I think that Fujita, it's going to be. It's a rapid transition from like these big main events that the audience has a very high expectation for.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because like over on the GRAPPL side, we've been covering more Noah because JP is a big fan. Garrett's become a big fan this last year or so. And it's just every time it's one step forward, two steps back. As good as the in-ring could be, as much as we want to say to our listeners, and I know you guys have been the same, New Japan's on the slide, but look at Noah. Noah's doing all these great main events. And then they do something like this. And I think Brian's nailed it in the chat. They've got a booker who just loves the older names, loves putting, like you say, combined age of 100. I think if you had the tag titles, that's a combined age of about 200. It's just, that's what the company is at this point. And as good a year as Nakajima had last year, it's not enough. And yeah, it is just frustrating for a company that has the opportunity to step forward and be that alternative we all want in the face of, what New Japan has been these last couple of years.
Well, I'm sure that we will be chatting more about Noah. And WH and I will be back next week doing a post-pro res. So, yes, I'm sure WH will have thoughts. Let's chat a bit about Ring of Honor. That was kind of the reason to have Benno on today. So it was February the 23rd of 2002 that the very first event, the Era of Honor, began at the Murphy Rec Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Benno, when was Ring of Honor first on your radar? Was this show one you were very, very much aware of ROH and seeking it out? Tell us just a little bit about your entry into discovering Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I think I would probably put it down to Power Slam magazine in the UK. They were covering the first couple of shows, so they were hot on it pretty much immediately as far as like doing write-ups, and there were photos and descriptions of, this low-key character and Christopher Daniels and Bryan Danielson and how good these wrestlers were. So it was on my radar for a while. And then I think, like a lot of people, you hear, talk of, Samoa Joe, you hear talk of the CM Punk and Raven stuff. And just through internet forums and such, I ended up kind of getting into Ring of Honor. And I do remember, I think I went on the ROH website and tried to order myself 4 or 5 DVDs, just blind, just to see, whether it is a company that I'd enjoy. Got to the checkout stage and thought, nah, I'm not spending money on a promotion I've never seen before, and cancelled. And then 2 weeks later, 5 DVDs turned up at my house. So somebody at ROH's end made some kind of mistake and sent them despite the fact I hadn't paid. And then I would say since that day, I probably spent thousands of pounds on Ring of Honor DVDs. So they got the money back out of me, and tracksuits and flights and tickets to shows. So yeah, that was it kind of worked. It worked out in the end as far as like a business decision, if that was something that they planned to trap this young, impressionable lad in Liverpool, England. But yeah, it was my absolute passion, those glory days from 2002 to 2007 or so, depending on where you want to draw the line, as good a run as any promotion ever. And yeah, I can't believe, it was 20 years ago when this thing started.
And I think it was like that first show of kind of establishing, it was certainly, I think, going after that lapsed ECW viewer and someone that was going to be buying tapes regularly to kind of fill that vacuum that was created when ECW went out of business the year prior. But by going with that main event of Low Ki, Daniels, and Bryan Danielson over, like, you had booked like Eddie Guerrero and Super Crazy on this show, and I would venture to guess that many promoters, that's the match you push as your main event and put on top. But I think that was a statement in and of itself of kind of creating like these regulars that you were going to get and putting these three on top to really establish the identity of the company on its very first show.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
it was the right time for that. Okay.
So, sorry, yeah, going back, I mean, John, one of the first projects you and I ever worked on was a set of little profile pieces on ROH for the Fight Network. And going back to that interview with Gabe, I mean, part of the nucleus of this promotion has always been to, bring on somebody like an Eddie Guerrero, but to ultimately make a statement by saying that this is a promotion, not, that we're not going to just simply grab the star name from the WWE into headline. We're going to use it to feature and spotlight our own guys. And certainly that's really worked out for him. And I think, as far as carving a niche outside that was different from the mainstream, I mean, they certainly did that. And in turn, I think really caused a real revolution that ultimately did affect how the WWE, looked at its hiring policies.
I think so too. Like when you go back and like so many of those names that would go on to huge success, I think like that was certainly an eye for talent that was evident. On top of it, Benno, it was sort of being able to kind of create these DVDs that became like must see, and you would just become like, it was just this ongoing story from DVD to DVD, and assisted as well by like a lot of new both like Power Slam magazine you mentioned and the newsletter coverage that it received that really put into context like what was going on in front of a couple hundred fans, and then having a much larger influence because of its bread and butter, which was tape sales.
Yeah, definitely. And, kids today might laugh at the idea of, I'll be on the ROH message board, seeing the spoilers come in live for a show. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, if you were lucky, a DVD might land on your doorstep, and you were always like a couple of shows behind. And it was always like there were multiple timelines when you were trying to follow along with the stuff and keep it going. But it was exactly that. It tapped into, the internet generation, the hardcore fan generation. I think ROH in a lot of ways was what ECW probably would have became, as it grew out of the hardcore style. And I think, Heyman said that before, that was maybe more the, the style they were going to lead into in the early 2000s. But, as the likes of us, kind of people of our age, became more prominent on the internet, message board culture. You mentioned the coverage it got in Power Slam, PW Insider, Dave Meltzer, starting to watch the odd show and, slap a 5-star rating on an indie show from, somewhere in New Jersey. It was that word of mouth that it was like, it was perfectly timed to capture that culture. And, it might not seem like a unique thing these days, but the idea of a promotion, just their MO being to go out there and have the best matches possible, to try and have a 5-star match that Dave Meltzer would rate in the Observer, to try and be the quote unquote work rate promotion. That was extremely unique for the time and very different to what we were seeing on TV, with Raw and SmackDown. So yeah, it was the perfect storm. And I mean, you can see the influence it's had on, the wrestling industry over the last 20 years, the biggest stars, or at least, some of the biggest stars, your Punks, your Joes, your Bryans. There are so many people that are part of that Ring of Honor legacy. And yeah, it just talks to the strength of that product and, how much it resonated in those years.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also like worth, looking at like that entire show as well. Like that first show, most are just going to remember like the main event and kind of the legacy of that. It was also a show that began with arguably the most tasteless thing that Ring of Honor ever did, with the Hit Squad and the Christopher Street connection, which I am not 100% certain, but nearly 100% sure is not on the version of the show that is on Honor Club. This, of course, the Christopher Street connection was a tag team that was presented as like this gay duo that were brought out and obliterated with chants from this audience. The commentary is rather brutal. And then the Hit Squad come out as like the baby faces to dispatch ROH of the Christopher Street connection. And it was It's horrible. It's been covered by through the years, which is a great ROH companion podcast. Spent their first show spending a lot of time on it. It was really horrible then. It's that much worse today. But that was like the first segment in ROH history, and you don't get to pick and choose what parts of your history you get to remember. That was a part of the first show, and it was arguably the worst thing that ever made its way onto an ROH release.
Yeah, it makes it like hard to recommend people to go back and watch the ROH catalog, because people are like, "Oh, should I watch the first show?" And it's like, yes, but unfortunately, the antithesis of what this company was supposed to stand for, honor, and it being a pure non-sports entertainment type product, and all of that kind of went out the window. And I don't know what they were trying to prove, some kind of point, or I believe it was a Rob Feinstein idea at the time. Not that makes it any better either, but yeah, it's awful to watch. It was awful at the time. It's extremely awful to watch with 2022 eyes and to see. And yeah, it's literally the opposite of what the main event of that show was supposed to give us.
It was like such a segment way that I think, like, in this modern era, I don't know if you can come back from something like that. Like, if that was your first step forward, I think not only fans that would revolt, I think performers would have been as put off by it. I mean, it's just, we're in such a better place today that I don't think we would ever have to see a segment like that make its way onto something. But that's whether you like it or not, that is a part of that first show that you can't just sanitize and forget about.
I mean, the DNA of Ring of Honor, I think it itself is maybe not all that pretty, but I at least choose to kind of think about it as its overall effect on the industry, and I would say it's largely very positive and not at all reflective of maybe some of its very first things. But it's really unfortunate that this happened to be the very first thing on the show, rather than everybody talking about the very first match, which was Jay Briscoe versus the Amazing Red.
Mm-hmm. In terms of like the shift of Ring of Honor, Benno, tell me about kind of your own like following the product in 2008 when Gabe Sapolsky leaves, and that period of time. Like, where did you sense, and are you like actively on the ROH message board at that time? Like, take us into kind of the instant reaction of a very, very pivotal figure in ROH's history that I think everyone will always link the two together. What that period meant for ROH.
Yeah, it was kind of I think the glory period for me of Ring of Honor, and the highest watermark as far as quality goes, was that 2004 to 2006 period. Mm-hmm. As you got into 2007, there was a lot of great stuff on the shows. The introduction of Chris Hero, the CZW stuff, across 2006 to 2007. There was a lot of great stuff, but I think as a booker, Gabe Sapolsky, as with most, great bookers over time, there's only so many great ideas a booker's going to have, and I think he just got stretched. And I mentioned before about ordering the DVDs and waiting a few weeks, and there was like a live show timeline and DVD timeline. They then added a pay-per-view timeline as well, so there were pay-per-views airing that were kind of not in sync with the DVDs to go with the live events, and I think they got too big and they were running too many shows, and Gabe couldn't keep up. So for me personally, like, really those unified shows and the first and second set of UK shows were kind of where the peak was, and where I could almost feel my own interest waning a little bit. And if I'm honest, towards the end of the Gabe run, I wasn't buying every DVD anymore. I was picking and choosing, and I was going off recommendations on the message board. And I think a lot of the hardcore fans kind of felt that same way. And yeah, Gabe leaving kind of felt inevitable at that point when it happened. And you look back and it's hard to bookend exactly what the ROH glory period is. You can cut it off when Gabe left, or you can cut it off when, say, Homicide beat Bryan for the title of Final Battle, or you can pick your moments. But it's in those couple of years towards the end, really, where I think the slide was obvious, and ROH kind of got too big to be small and too small to be big. Kerry Silken had spent a lot of money on the company over those years. He wanted that back. They were starting to look at doing the TV show on HDNet in those years as well. Something had to come to a head, unfortunately, and this great thing we had just couldn't stay perfect, forever.
It was also way like in just looking back at this time period, like when they're shifting away from Gabe in 2008, they start on HDNet shortly after that, and it's like this period in just media in general where the DVD market is declining, but we're not really into this current era of streaming at the same time. And ROH was in this middle point where HDNet was not the game changer they hoped for it to be, and then they were trying iPay-per-views at the same time. And man, there were some legendary disasters of these iPay-per-views, of the stream constantly going down. Like I remember nights where I had earmarked the whole night to like cover an ROH show, and I just being furious at my computer as I'm an hour into this. Just like it was, a several long period before kind of streaming pay-per-views reached like the level we're at today, where by and large you sit down for a show, you're not too concerned about, am I going to get to see this entire show? But that was a problem that really plagued ROH.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking back to that time, I kind of felt like they were almost like a guinea pig for, much of the technology that I think, we kind of take for granted these days, We have to kind of remember, like, being able to stream live was really a luxury that I think was afforded to really, the most high-scale promotions. I think for a long time, everybody was really wishing that, so there was a promotion out there that had the production quality of, let's say, a TNA, but with maybe the philosophical mindset of a Ring of Honor. And unfortunately, I mean, we have to be grateful, I think, for Sinclair, and for HDNet and for things like that kept this promotion alive. But they were always a step below, I think, the current standard. And really, that's we look at AEW today, and maybe we finally achieved that dream of a promotion with the mindset, like an indie mindset of a Ring of Honor, but with the production quality of a TNA and beyond, really. So unfortunately, that really was ROH's to take, but for whatever reason, it was never really achieved.
Yeah, it seemed to be like that conundrum sometimes you see, Benno, where you're ahead of the curve in terms of like identifying a lot of future stars, but the ones that when they would be their most profitable, it would be making money for other companies, not so much ROH. And they did have that, like, I would say like the popularity peak of the company was those like Bucks and Cody years from 2017 up until they left at the end of 2018. Like those were the biggest years for ROH. But again, it was ultimately them moving on to another venture in AEW.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of, me being, older, I think of Ring of Honor as those Gabe years, but for a lot of people, that's peak Ring of Honor, that those years where, the Bucks were around and Cody was coming in, and even, some of the Steen and Generico stuff, kind of that entire generation. But unfortunately, yeah, again, Ring of Honor gets in its own way, doesn't it? Because it's got these, they always felt bigger than the company, those guys, and they always felt like they were out on an island and kind of doing their own thing. And yeah, you mentioned, Wai mentioned there AEW, and AEW is absolutely, it's continuing on the legacy of what Ring of Honor was, both in my glory period, but also in what was making Ring of Honor hot in those late 10s, when the Cody and the Bucks and that were hot. ROH never really took full advantage of that. They had them under contract and they were happy to continue doing their Sinclair TV, but rightly or wrongly, they never had that ambition to take things to the next level that a Tony Khan had and an AEW had. So yeah, we can absolutely say that was the business height, and it was a well-run, competent business in those years. Unfortunately, yeah, the creative maybe didn't come along with it, and also, like I say, the ambition didn't really match what they had to.
For me, I mean, let's also remember part of the excitement I think ROH throughout some of those years was their partnership with New Japan, but it got to the point where they were so incredibly overshadowed by the rising star power of the guys in New Japan that, I mean, in contrast, the Ring of Honor originals just really didn't feel that special, and that probably reached a boiling point for their first Madison Square Garden show.
I think that was like the perfect, like that show, you can view it in many different lenses in terms of, what what inspired people to buy tickets to that show and sell out the Garden, but also like coming out of that show, like those were two very distinct shows under that roof, and a positive and negativity that came with it as well, and was kind of like the last hurrah before a very, very rough 2019 for the company. And you fast forward to the present, Benno, and as they're coming back WrestleMania weekend with the Supercard show, where does that show kind of rank for you just in terms of WrestleMania weekend? Is that a priority show for you to see? And how much like curiosity do you have of what they present that night?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it's up there. Obviously, GCW is always the lead on these Mania weekends, and let's hope we get better shows this year than we got last year. I imagine we will with proper crowds and things being a lot healthier this year. But yeah, I mean, it's intriguing. You look at a Jonathan Gresham. He's someone who seems extremely loyal to the company. He's still carrying the same belt I've got. He's still, for example, he worked the Progress Manchester show a few weeks ago, and interestingly, that show went on the WWE network, but the Gresham match didn't. So that tells you, there's still either WWE still see Ring of Honor as, a legitimate thing, or, Gresham has some kind, his ROH deal still prevents that happening. So it is still very much a functioning real promotion. And yeah, it's what that looks like going into the rest of the year, really. But I think it's going to be, it's going to be the likes of Gresham. It's going to be big shows, tentpole shows like this one, and maybe the odd taping, every few months with whoever's available. But yeah, it does seem like they have the appetite to continue on, which is not what a lot of us expected. I think a lot of us thought it was a bit of a WCW situation where it was like, oh yeah, you're going to come back and do more shows. But it seems like they do genuinely intend to do that. And yeah, there does seem to be a bit of a buzz behind that Supercard of Honor show. And it's certainly an interesting one to follow and see, what else they announce for that card.
I think the combination of having Gresham out there doing all these matches with the title and this promotion for the Hall of Fame have been like smart ideas that are not, super labor intensive to do. It's just like some web posts, customizing. Like I've been enjoying watching like their television just with a lot of these throwback matches. Like you got Joe and Kobashi on the program this past weekend. I've got to imagine that this ROH, this Hall of Fame class has been really strongly put together. Who, in your estimation, would be kind of names that go alongside these ones that you have already named to the class that you think would be kind of vital in telling the history of this company?
Yeah, it's funny because I kind of got used to the idea that ROH doesn't take advantage of their history or doesn't appreciate their history in some ways. And then they've nailed this at this Hall of Fame class. Like, it's pitch perfect. Like me and Alan Farrell on the Torch are doing a show later this week where we're going to be drafting our own ROH Hall of Fame, and I don't think we can do better. Joe, Danielson, the Briscoes, Punk, like that is a first ballot Hall of Fame class. Personally, I would make an argument for Loki, as first world champion and being so important to those first few formative shows, but he can certainly go in a second class with Homicide and and names like that. But this first class, it's almost too stacked. They've started extremely strong, but you talk about a Mount Rushmore of ROH, and I wouldn't argue this one. That this makes sense. I assume there'd be a lot of maybe more modern names, a Matt Taven and a Jay Lethal, those types, and maybe they'll come in the years going forward. But yeah, this is just the ideal first class, and I don't think I can really criticize it.
What sort of presentation are you hoping for, Benno, for this special?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, it'd be something like the Indie Hall of Fame, which was just cool to see, Punk and Hero and Prazak and those likes just in the same room. But it doesn't really feel like we're getting that. It feels like, yeah, these TV specials and, maybe a video or two from the guys on, Supercard of Honor night or something like that is maybe the most we can expect. So I do think that's a bit of a missed opportunity. And maybe that's a consequence of going for such big names right out the gate, expecting Brian, Punk, Joe to make time for something like this, maybe rather than one of those names and a couple of lesser names. It does make it a bit harder to pull together. But yeah, I think that's probably more reasonably what we're going to get. But yeah, they've paid a lot of respect to their own history here. And it's a fantastic first class, and it's just great to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I echo what a lot of people have said as well, that I think when you're looking at outside the ring performers, like I think, Kerry Silkin, there is no Ring of Honor without Kerry Silkin absorbing those losses year after year. And Gabe Sapolsky, and I don't know if a Gabe would even be interested in something like that, but I think those are the two that when you're talking about non-wrestlers are key to ROH's history.
Totally those types of guys you'd hope would get on it. over time. Like I did expect him to be one of the names here as just an extra bonus name, especially with him being so tied to the promotion still. But I think the likes of those guys, your Todd Sinclairs, those types of guys, I think will come in future years.
Mm-hmm. I think, going through a lot of this history this week, there really needs to be like the definitive book that is written on Ring of Honor, preferably by someone not attached to the company as well. I think that, there's plenty of candidates out there. Maybe yourself, Benno. Maybe you could be the author of said book. But there you go. 20 years ago today, Ring of Honor launching at the Murphy Rec Center. And we'll just wrap up the show here. Tonight, Dynamite, what we have announced so far is the Tag Team Battle Royal, where the winning team will be one of 3 in the triple threat at Revolution. Jade Cargill taking on the Bunny for the TBS Championship. A face-to-face involving Chris Jericho and Eddie Kingston. And then Malachi Black and Brody King taking on Pac and Penta. That is what we have announced so far. And I guess we will see if there's a bounce back after last week's disappointing Dynamite number on TBS. But I would not say a show that is jumping off the page, Benno, for tonight. But we shall see what is in store from Bridgeport, Connecticut. Their first card in Connecticut.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, like that number last week was feels like it's an aberration. It feels like it's just one of those weeks where none of us can really explain it. You can blame Big Bang Theory being slightly down, and that's the best you can do. There isn't really a reason. Coming off one of their best shows ever and into one of their best shows ever, that's just one of those things. So yeah, you would hope this number is maybe more reflective of the quality of last week, even if there aren't those big draws there. And yeah, personally, I'll be hoping they're back around that 1 million mark. And yeah, maybe we'll get a couple of Tony Khan announcements as the evening goes on to maybe draw a few more people in. But yeah, solid enough show, if not spectacular looking.
We've got a few super chats if you guys don't mind sticking around and answering some of these. The first one comes to us from Jake from the Windy City, who sends a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Jake, for the support. Jake says, I still have my ROH Punk vs. Joe trilogy DVD set, and I'm still enjoying it today. Has the door closed on ROH possibly having a sale? Would it be beneficial? Beneficial to whom?
Yeah, that would be the question. I mean, Sinclair on its highest level has gone through, quite a tumultuous period, and it's all in. I think it's valuing like content that feeds all of these syndicated networks that they have, and it's content we own. So why don't we maximize that? In terms of I don't think you can ever fully rule it out, but I would say if you're talking about within the wrestling ecosystem, it's that library. And if you see like a great value to it, because, if you're just looking at like talent, well, those contracts are all, if not all, like they're not being renewed. So the talent you're free to go after. It's the library that a wrestling company would be most interested in. And I don't see WWE having any desire to pick up any tape libraries when you've got this Peacock deal that pays you the same no matter what's on the network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think a lot of it depends on, is an AEW wanting to get into that market? Are they wanting to tell their own history of wrestling? You could have the ROH tape library, you could have the PWG tape library, maybe even Impact, in there if that becomes a thing. I mean, that does feel a little bit like what's going on. In some ways, ROH is continuing to rumble on and do shows, to keep that value up potentially for a buy at some point. But I could see it being beneficial to, a Tony Khan to buy out an ROH, both just the IP, selling old T-shirts and doing something with the branding of Ring of Honor. But yeah, that library is absolutely the main thing, and ROH themselves haven't made much of that library over the years, so it would be nice if somebody did take it off their hands.
And it would be telling how these Hall of Fame episodes are doing, because if they're doing comparable numbers to the newer stuff that they had been producing, well, man, we don't have to go out and do all these tapings. True. We could just rely on our library. If people are going to tune into these shows, like it seems to be like the most interest I've seen in like some of these ROH episodes have been, going back to the older stuff that, hasn't aired on TV.
We go up next to Brandon from New Jersey, who sends a $5 super chat. Thank you, Brandon. He says, so happy Fujita is the new Noah champion. Can't wait for the big rematch against Fedor on a pontoon in the South China Sea.
All right.
Okay.
We can just discount that super chat. Just send it back to Brandon.
Yeah, I'll get you a refund there, Brandon. Thank you. Let's go up next to MJ from NJ, who sends a $10 super chat. Thank you for the support as always, MJ. He says, I went to my first ever ROH show because Pollock hyped the Canadian show, and that's where I first saw and fell in love with the BTE crew. I met Wai for the first time outside MSG. Shout out ROH and the memories.
All right. Well, there you go. MSG brought MJ and Wai together in living color.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, honestly, I mean, MJ kind of brings that up, but a lot of my great wrestling memories have been meeting, various people, hanging out at the Ted Reeve Arena whenever ROH was in town. It was really like the annual gathering place of like this type of wrestling fan.
Even during a garbage strike in 2009, where Ted Reeve Arena was a designated dumping site during the garbage strike. So it smelled awful at that place.
Yes, it did. All right, up next we go to Brian Strelakis with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Brian, who says, great show, guys. My ROH fandom was at its highest during the Gabe years, and my first live show was Testing the Limit in August of 2004, way back then. Do either of you remember that show?
I'd have to look.
The names of like these ROH events have always been pretty like forgettable.
I love
haven't
them.
they?
At our best.
Yeah. Gabe had like a random generator. Like Supercard of Honor's the absolute worst. It's a big WrestleMania weekend show. Supercard of Honor, awful. But they were testing the limits. The Aries Danielson match where they decided to try and there've been a lot of 1 hour matches, and I think they were going to go and try and go 2 hours or something like that. And halfway through the match, we're like, I think we need to take this home, guys. This isn't working, and they went home. So yeah, what a fair show to go to.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your super chats.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap things up. But before we get out of here, Benno, please let everyone know where they can hear more from you and the upcoming live show, WrestleMania weekend, that you guys are going to be doing, because ProRes podcasting is not dead. BritRes podcasting is not dead.
There you go. We're still rumbling on, but yeah, you can find myself and Martin from British Wrestling Experience, JP and Gareth from GRAPPL, and announced in the last couple of weeks, Davey Portman of this very website up next, who we've managed to trap in the UK for the time being, is going to be joining us on the night. We are live in Leeds Sunday, the 3rd of April, which is WrestleMania Sunday. So on the afternoon, you can come and see 3 live podcasts with us, get have a few beers with us at the Northern Monk Brewery in Leeds. And then later that evening, if you fancy it, David Abraham is doing a fucked up show in Leeds that night. So that's a nice little combo you could maybe take in. So he's going to be around. And then in the evening, we're all going to be watching WrestleMania together at the Hooked On Wrestling party. You can get discounted tickets for that and tickets for the live podcast showing in the afternoon at grapplapp.com/support or grapple.bigcartel.com that you can see there on the screen. But yeah, we're going to make a day of it. We're going to have a few drinks, and I think we'll need a few to get through a second night of WrestleMania this year.
There you go. 3 live crews on Sunday, April the 3rd, as Davey Portman is on his podcasting excursion over in the UK to gain knowledge and insight back home. So we look forward to Davey coming back one day here to Canada. But there you go. You can get all of your information there and catch Benno on both the GRAPPL Spotlight podcast and here at the site on the British Wrestling Experience with Martin Bushby. And that's going to wrap it up. Wai and I will be back tonight at 10:15 Eastern, live for Double Ice Cap and Espresso members at postwrestlingcafe.com. We've also got the latest Rewind to Wai up, chatting WrestleMania 27, featuring The Rock as your guest host, Wai's favorite WrestleMania theme, written in the stars by Tiny Tempa. And of course, the main event that year, Michael Cole versus Jerry the King Lawler, one of the most hideous wrestling matches you are going to see in WrestleMania lore. All of that is covered and much, much more. This is the show where Vince McMahon wanted to fight Dana White on the card. It didn't happen, but we'll tell you about all the circumstances behind that idea. Lots of that at postwrestlingcafe.com. And that's going to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in to your Post Daily News Update.